Time is a funny thing. I never thought I would have to intentionally and laboriously cram a 2-hour movie into a 5-hour period. That math doesn't work. That is, until you add the confounding factor of children. There is no math anymore, and time doesn't make any sense. Thanks, kids. Dad has lost it. It's an all new Prove It To Me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prove It To Me. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Law. Hey, I know it's been a minute, but I'm told I should stop apologizing for the sporadicity of my episodes. It kinda just is what it is. I've been very busy doing my own research, and I just haven't had the time. I also am not one to create content just to create content. I know there's something to consistently touching an audience to create retention and grow a following, and that makes sense. But also, and I don't want this to seem like I don't care about you because I do, but a lot about doing this podcast is for me. It took me a while to find a creative outlet for myself that just made sense and provided some value to other people, but honestly, I'm good with just having a handful of listeners. Creating this thing is cathartic for me. It's my own form of therapy. A couple of weeks ago, I even thought about putting out a short clip of something I had thought of while I was falling asleep one night. Then, of course, that turned into not falling asleep because I was thinking about it too much. So I sent an email to myself about what I was thinking so I could stop thinking about it. The next morning, I realized it was pretty soft. I didn't really have a good reason or anything to back up what I was thinking, and it might have been a little accusatory in its nature. So I skipped it then, but I will still share it with you. When, you ask? Well, I will share it at the end of this episode. Ha! See? Audience retention. I have a little bit of a handle on this. With that being said, I know the next couple of months will be a bit unpredictable when it comes to putting out new episodes. I'm on a time crunch with some projects, and I need to focus my efforts on completing those. I'm hoping to get back to a more consistent output on the podcast after that, but this summer will be a little crazy. Oh, also, I have the Nintendo Switch 2 on pre-order, and you can bet your ass that I will find my catharsis in hours of playing Mario Kart and The Legend of Zelda starting next week. If you're looking for me, that's where I'll be. Alright, on to the main topic I wanted to cover today. So, I'm a Facebook doom scroller. Well, maybe doom scroller is not the right term since I have unfollowed most of the unfulfilling negativity that had previously showed up in my feed. My Facebook feed these days is mostly Star Trek, cooking, gaming, and a little underrated show called Community. Hashtag 6 seasons in a movie. And then the random sponsored shit that Facebook's algorithm has determined is relevant to me. I find it interesting to try to figure out how different advertisers will reach their engagement metrics. The back-end analytics are always changing and getting better, honestly. So the way advertisers shape their content to get the most meaningful engagement is interesting. There's a metric for reach, like the amount of people who actually may come across your content in their feed. And there's a metric for views, which means you might need to make the text part of your post longer than 3 lines so that your audience will click to read further to get that metric. But of course, you have to make that first 3 lines catchy enough to get somebody to click. Then, of course, there are metrics for reactions and comments. And I do love comment sections. When you see that one of the reactions is the ha-ha laughing face, you know the comment section is going to have either a bunch of people capitalizing on a joke for good, honest fun, or a bunch of absolute trolls. Or both, actually. There's a page I follow called People Incorrectly Correcting Other People, where posts are usually screenshots of, people incorrectly correcting other people. This page is a rabbit hole that takes you to the absolute bottom of the barrel as far as humanity is concerned. Any given comment section will be full of people who are absolutely sure of themselves, and they will inevitably be corrected, either correctly or incorrectly, by other people who are also absolutely sure of themselves. It's maddening. But there's a part of me that enjoys reading through what is quite probably the downfall of humanity without the content being tied to American politics. It's a phenomenon that you don't see outside of social media. Strangers don't normally gather in rooms and incessantly troll each other and argue about meaningless details that really amount to nothing. That only really happens with families at Thanksgiving or with safety committees. Dr. Law, what did you just say? Yeah, so anyway, back to the advertisers. There's apparently a new way to measure engagement. A lot of newer posts will have an image, usually a meme or something else catchy, and in the description at the top, they'll have an arrow that says link in the comments or something to that effect. It forces you to open the comments section and engage with the post if you want to know the whole story, which is kind of a crapshoot as to whether the link leads you to a story that is as interesting as the original post made it sound. Yes, this is called clickbait. Usually, the story, especially when it's from a small media outlet you've never heard of, or maybe even some of the ones you have, will be an elaborate embellishment of some small detail about something that got you excited and really amounts to absolutely nothing of value. But that's not the point. When you get to that page, there are usually many, many advertisements. The smaller and more unknown the media outlet, the more advertisements you can expect. Now, you might not notice it because you're used to seeing pop ups from your years of surfing on the web, but the whole time you are trying to satisfy your FOMO on information that was promised by the likely misleading initial post, the folks behind the website are making money just by you visiting the page. Mostly, they don't care if the content is real or meaningful, they only care that you're there so they can make their money. Honestly, I love the free market, so I'm good with folks making money. I just need the folks clicking the links to realize what their clicks ultimately mean. You have to have the initiative to figure out whether the content you are receiving has any value or if you have really just been turned into a living, breathing, unknown dollar amount or a statistic. Anyway, one day several weeks ago at this point, I'm scrolling through my feed and I see a post with a headline that starts with, you guessed it, study finds. Of course, you know I gravitate to that stuff. No way am I going to get the full picture from the headline of the post, but I'm sure that's what they're counting on. I have to click the link, but I see study finds, so I'm game. I'll make them some money. The post says study finds friends who playfully roast each other are more trustworthy and honest. Hey, I can get into that. It honestly makes sense. I mean, the people I consider to be my best friends, the ones I can reliably confide in for any number of reasons, are also the people I can count on for a good roast. We always make fun of each other. And I would love to say that I'm the one who does the most roasting, but that just wouldn't be true. The truth is, I'm an easy mark, and I'm not quite witty enough to be the best roaster. I've always been the butt of the joke. I'm used to it. Hang on, I'm going to write that down. I probably need to talk to my therapist about that. So, yeah, you might be able to relate to this. Think about your own best friends. Do you roast each other? Do you find you can trust those people better because you can playfully roast each other? Or have you never really thought about it that way? Okay, so I'm hooked. I jump down to the comments section. Wait, where's the link? There's no link? So, how are they making money on this? Okay, so now I'm even more confused. I mean, obviously, this group just shared a meme about this study and they forgot to include the link, right? Hello? Now I have to turn to Old Faithful Google, where most good research starts, right? Search term study finds roasting friends. Now, my search results are pretty vast, but they all seem to be about the same thing. What's concerning is that a few of these go back to posts from social media Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, etc. But I do get some news articles in here. Let's go there. News articles generally have links to sources. Surely they wouldn't make something up. Now, I'm assuming this is a fairly new study, so I'm going to start with anything from 2025. Here's one from March of this year. Fox 2 Now, which appears to be a local Fox affiliate out of St. Louis. This is Blair's Social Second by Blair Ledette, and it's titled, Do You Insult or Roast Your Friends for Fun? I'm looking for a study link. Second paragraph. A recent study reveals that friends who playfully insult each other are 300% more loyal and honest. The study claims lighthearted jabs strengthen bonds and create deeper trust and openness. Okay, Blair, cool quote. I'm in. Now, since this is Blair's Social Second, this article is mostly Blair's commentary along with some comments she collected from readers. Not that interesting to me, but okay. So, give me the link, Blair. Blair? Blair, where is the link? Where is the link to the study, Blair? Hey, Fox 2 out of St. Louis, did you know about this? Did you know there is no link to this study? Do you guys make a habit of not sharing your sources? I mean, it's not that hard to include a hyperlink. You've got links to all sorts of stuff I don't need all over this page. What about the study? What about journalistic integrity? Hey, Fox 2 Now out of St. Louis. Where the hell is my study link? Where is my damn link? All right, back to Google. Like, surely someone has this. I've got this one from East Coast Radio, also published in March. It's titled, Are Friends Who Roast You More Loyal? With the tagline, Some of the strongest friendships are built on insults. Okay, source. Haha, okay. The source, get this, is Fox 2 Now. I mean, at least East Coast Radio cited a source, but we just found out that their source didn't share a source. In this same article, there's a video clip from the I've Had It podcast. From the amount of likes on Instagram, this is obviously a podcast that is far more popular than mine. That's fine. Maybe they have a link. Nope. They just repeated the same statement. New study finds that friends who often playfully insult each other are 300% more honest and loyal. Guys, where the fuck is my link? There's nothing else meaningful in this Google search. Let's go to Google Scholar. Remember, I'm trying to find out about this recent study, so I'm looking at 2024 to present. Okay, study finds roasting friends is my search term. I've got roasting wheat, roasting peanuts, roasting politicians. Okay, maybe the word roasting is my problem. What's a more academic term for roasting? Insulting? Banter? Okay, insulting friends. Insulting friends' loyalty. You know what? I'm not really a fan of Google Scholar and I'm not getting anything anyway. Let's try my school library databases. Okay, peer-reviewed journals 2023 to 2025. Insulting friends. Nothing. Some stuff about cyberbullying. Roasting friends. Nothing. Banter and loyalty. Nothing. I've got nothing, folks. This is about to be the shortest Study Finds episode ever. All right, maybe back to the Google search and look for something a little older. Maybe it wasn't recent after all. Here's one from the Swaddle. I don't know the Swaddle, so my expectations are low. This one is from 2020, written by Aditi Murti, titled, Research Shows We All Should Absolutely Relentlessly Roast Our Friends. Tagline, disparagement humor, the fancy term for your sick burns, acts as a social lubricant, putting people at ease around each other. Ugh. Social lubricant? Okay, well, at least we're in the same theme, and we've got an academic term, disparagement humor. I'm probably going to take that back to the library for another search, but let's look at this first to see if there are any links. I do have a full-width picture of Chelsea Peretti from her role in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I love her, and I love that show. I don't remember if I finished it or not, but many great moments. The first link is embedded in this sentence. According to family/parenting beat reporter and author KJ Del Antonia, pro-social teasing among your friends is known to reveal affiliations and help friends become closer. That link goes to an article in the New York Times from 2012, and That article has another link to quote unquote research, which leads to a 404 error. Dead end. But we've got another search term, pro-social teasing. Next link is to an article by Dr. Peter Gray in Psychology Today titled The Educative Value of Teasing, and it's from 2013. This is not a peer reviewed article, and Dr. Gray's sources point to things even older, and he even cited another article authored by himself. Fine. Now, I've got nothing else from the swaddle, and I'm not finding recent research, so let's take our new terms and see if we can come up with something. Starting with disparagement humor, and now I'm expanding my search to the last 5 years, again, looking only for peer reviewed journal articles. If it's truly a study, that's where we will find it. I have one that is political identity moderates evaluations of disparagement humor. Another one that's disparagement humor permits unsafe COVID-19 behaviors. Diminished self concept and social exclusion, disparagement humor from the target's perspective. This whole list is really studies on the negative impacts of disparagement humor, and most of them specifically target things like gender identity, race, sexual orientation, obesity, violence, and the overall perpetuation of offensiveness and prejudice. Out of 58 results, none of them are pointing towards a positive result, and none are about friendship. So when I add friendship to the search to narrow the results, I've got, one qualitative study. That has the word ambiguity in the title and doesn't appear to be completely against disparagement humor. We'll pocket that for now and look at the other term. Okay, using the term pro-social teasing. I've got a small handful of results, and I think one of these studies is going to give us a good picture of some recent research into this topic. All right, so I'm going to briefly go through these two different studies, and we're going to see if there is anything here that points to the claim that we started with, that friends who insult each other are 300% more loyal and trustworthy. This first one, published by Johannesson in 2021 in a journal called Young, is titled Blurred Lines: The Ambiguity of Disparaging Humor and Slurs in Norwegian High School Boys' Friendship Groups. This study took place in Norway, and they used a qualitative approach consisting of participant observation and individual interviews with students to look at the use of disparaging humor and slurs amongst high school boys. Now, anytime you take a qualitative approach to research, you are embarking on a very long and arduous journey, and it feels like you are fumbling around in the dark for what seems like the rest of eternity. There are generally accepted methods for coding and organizing data obtained from interviews and things like that. And of course, there is software to help, and it looks like this author used those things. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I would hope they do the same for me. Honestly, qualitative research is really supposed to be used to explore concepts that have never been researched before so that you can identify themes that can later be used for quantitative research. You need both. So here's what they found from all of these interviews and observations. Basically, high school boys pretty often use disparagement humor. A lot of this humor is prejudice and discriminatory in nature, often including racial slurs and gay slurs. However, they found that the intent behind this humor was not linked to discriminatory or prejudiced attitudes or practices. They are specifically pointing out that the lines between harmful and harmless disparagement humor are blurred and inherently complex. Generally, the boys felt that this humor was necessary to maintaining friendships, and they felt they should be able to joke about anything. There were also some weird nuances to this, and if you've been in these environments, you might be familiar with these nuances. For example, the boys did indicate that they tended to be more careful about using slurs when someone who was gay or belonged to a minority race were present. The author also observed that students who belonged to minority groups often used self deprecating humor, likely as a strategic way to combat or diffuse tensions or manage emotions. The author states that what is unknown is what would happen to these friendships if someone was hurt by a joke made and actually spoke up about it. Even if they are hurt, they may not speak up about it because the friendship is more important, and having positive friendships has been associated with success in school. Now, the real kicker to this study is that this makes discipline very difficult and complex for teachers. Teachers often crack down on the language used in disparaging humor because it is commonly and logically linked to bullying, racism, and discrimination. But because the boys have positive results in their friendships by engaging in this type of humor, the eradication of such behavior is very difficult. The author suggests that ultimately this needs to be explored more, and for now, it may be important for teachers to work through both the positive and negative aspects to disparaging humor. Now, with qualitative studies, we don't get scores. We don't get numbers like 300%. So, this isn't the study we were looking for. However, it is basically the only study in my results that seem to be any kind of supportive of disparagement humor. So, let's look at the one about prosocial teasing. This study by Platt and colleagues was published in 2022 in a journal called Psychology in the Schools. It's titled, "You Can't Sit With Us, Just Kidding," an investigation into the association between empathy and prosocial teasing. The authors aim to examine the relationship between prosocial teasing as a form of relational aggression and empathy among fifth grade students in the Midwest United States. The reason I wanted to look at this article specifically is because the authors give a background on both aggression and prosocial teasing. If we're looking for supportive information, it should be there. First, the authors made the distinction between physical and relational aggression, noting that both may have proactive and reactive elements. Relational aggression, specifically, refers to behaviors intended to threaten or harm friendships or one's feelings of belonging to a group. This includes spreading rumors, exclusion of a peer from a group, and threats to withdraw friendships. Of course, it has been associated with negative outcomes. Another interesting piece here is that there is conflicting information on the difference between boys and girls using aggression. An early study back in 1995 suggested that girls were more likely to use relational aggression while boys were more likely to use physical aggression. Another study in 2003 found no difference between boys and girls using relational aggression, and a second study, also in 2003, found that boys were more likely to use relational aggression than girls. Then, one more study in 2009 found that when they controlled for physical aggression, girls were more likely to use relational aggression than boys. Is your head spinning? Actually, that's a good thing. When we have conflicting results from multiple studies, it means we need to continue to do bigger and broader research looking at many different factors. Most importantly, this illustrates that no one study will ever serve as the source of truth. Let me repeat that. No one study will ever serve as the source of truth for any given relationship between variables. You cannot get causation from one study. You need many studies with repeated measures and big samples to get really strong correlations. And in fact, you may never really get to causation. Okay, so let's look at their background on prosocial teasing. Prosocial teasing, the authors say, is generally defined as an ambiguous social provocation that is intended to playfully express something to the target. It includes elements of aggression, humor or play, and ambiguity to convey a positive message to the target of the tease despite the negative face value of the words or actions being used. Now, the impact of prosocial teasing is qualified by the relationship. Even if the teaser had positive intentions, the impact of prosocial teasing may harm the relationship if the relationship between the teaser and the receiver is not established. On the other hand, if two people have a close relationship, the receiver could perceive the same comment in a more positive way and with better intentions. Furthermore, the authors say that despite the negative associations between aggression and youth outcomes for both physical and relational aggression, there is growing evidence that the more playful versions of aggression may be related to positive outcomes. Okay, here we go. 300%? Let's see. The authors point out that previous studies may indicate that prosocial teasing has been found to strengthen friendships and build stronger bonds between people. Now, here's where I'm going to go down a rabbit hole to find my answer to the question we started with. Stick with me. I'll include the citations for these studies in the episode notes, but I'm not going too deep here for time's sake. Basically, the study by Gorman and Jordan in 2015 found that teasing is more likely to be interpreted positively when relationships are close, and being closer can enhance the positive interpretation of teasing. What that doesn't tell us is whether teasing enhances the relationship. That's what we were looking for from the start. Instead, this study shows that it's the other way around. But they do reference a couple of articles by Keltner and colleagues that apparently may show us what we're looking for. The study to support what we're looking for here just so happens to be one that was published way back in 1998. The authors studied participants from a fraternity at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They had a total of 48 participants, and they were encouraged to tease each other as they normally would, and various measurements were taken and observations were made. What we are looking for is the answer to their second research question: how might teasing relate to increased affiliation? In their analysis, they found that overall prosocial teasing significantly correlated with increased flirtation, positive emotion, reduced negative emotion, and increased positive relative to negative emotion. What we don't have is a 300% number. Okay, now we need to dig back out of this rabbit hole. It's not because we've hit a dead end, it's because we need to come back to the whole reason we went down this path in the first place. Here's the deal. We never found the study that was the subject of that Facebook post I found. There was no link. We never found the study that was the subject of the article posted by Fox 2 Now out of St. Louis. They did not post a link. And none of the results of the studies we did find provide any evidence to back up their claim, even if they were favorable to the notion of teasing being supportive of friendships. What did we find? Number one, disparagement humor is complex. It can be important to certain friendships, but it can also hurt people. Number two, prosocial teasing is also complex. It is rooted in relational aggression, but it has positive intent. Number three, the positive reception of teasing may be dependent on the closeness of the relationship. Number four, the closeness of the relationship may be enhanced by teasing, the extent to which is unclear. Number five, no single study may serve as the source of truth for anything, and multiple studies that seemingly examine the same concepts may produce different results. Finally, and I cannot stress this enough, number six, Fox 2 Now out of St. Louis. I am addressing you directly. You have egregiously violated journalistic integrity by perpetuating the claim of a study that does not exist. Fox 2 Now out of St. Louis, you are on notice. Cite your damn sources. Okay, we're coming up on the end now, and I want to share that small thought I had the other day. It's this: be curious. Be comfortable when you don't have a conclusion. Let the absence of conclusion spark more curiosity. When you are presented with an idea that goes against what you think is true, don't just dismiss it. Be curious. And when you're presented with an idea that does align with what you already think is true, don't just automatically accept it. Be curious. When you have a gap in knowledge, don't fill it with assumptions. Fill it with curiosity. That's it. Soft, I know. But this is how research starts. Be curious, not assumptive. Oh, so this week I got to meet up with Dr. Todd Lushine once again to present at the ABC Safety Champions Conference in Orlando. Thanks to my friend Tim Bernardi, we got to expand on the conversation we had back in episode 102 of this podcast, and I did record the session. Once I have some time to go through this and make edits, you can look forward to hearing that conversation on a brand new episode of this podcast in the coming weeks. Between now and then, I will be logging many hours in Mario Kart on my new Nintendo Switch 2, and I may or may not make myself available for anything outside of that. Just being honest. Until next time, I'm Dr. Matt Law. This has been another episode of Study Finds on the Prove It To Me podcast. Take care and stay safe, everyone. Prove It To Me is produced by me, Matt Law. Original music by Wes London. You can find this podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Like what you've heard so far? Please like, subscribe, and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Got questions about what we talked about or research that you want to share? Send an email to contact@proveitpod.com. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and its guests and do not necessarily represent the official position, opinion, or strategies of their employers or companies. Examples of research and data analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based on very limited, often single use case, and sometimes dated information. Assumptions made within this discussion about research and data analyses are not necessarily representative of the position of the host, the guests, or their employers or companies. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast. The presentation of the content by the guests does not necessarily constitute an active endorsement of the content by the host.